Hi everybody, it's Christopher and welcome to Life's Not Over, It Just Looks Different on YouTube. On today's video, I want to talk about accessibility on public transit. Now, if you're a transit user like I am, you probably remember a day many years ago when you used to get on a bus and maybe a route that you weren't familiar with or didn't take very often, and you would ask the driver to let you know when you got off at a particular stop. And the driver would say, sure, and you'd go take a seat. And you'd be cruising along on the bus, riding along, only to discover that the driver forgot about you and forgot to call off your stop, so now you've missed it. That used to happen to people who are blind or partially sighted a lot, until we had the advent of automated stop announcements, which was wonderful. When I moved to Toronto in early 2000, I found that they had automated stop announcements on their subway lines, which was absolutely wonderful because I was new to the city. I was learning the routes, and maybe I'd look it up on a map before I left. And then I knew what stop I was listening for. So it was really handy to have those automated stop announcements because it told me when to get off, basically. And it became even more important to me in 2005 when I lost my eyesight. At that time, though, they still didn't have automated stop announcements on their buses. So what they had instead was the drivers were instructed to call off the stops. But that was always a bit of a hit or miss proposition because some drivers would call off every stop, which was fantastic. Other drivers would call off the major streets, which was good, but not really what was supposed to happen. And some drivers wouldn't call off any stops at all. Eventually, they did get automated stop announcements on all of their buses. And for the most part, it worked pretty well most of the time. Occasionally, they didn't work, at which point the drivers were supposed to revert back to the old ways, and they were supposed to call off the stops. But again, some did, some didn't, some were somewhere in between. Now, there are a couple of other cities that really do things really well that I've noticed on transit systems, and I absolutely love it. In Winnipeg, for instance, they didn't have this when I was a kid growing up there, but on subsequent trips that I've made back there in the last few years, not only do they have automated stop announcements on their buses, they also have this system where when the bus pulls up and the doors open up, there's an automated voice that tells you what the bus name and route number is, which was fantastic. I wish more cities had that. One of the other things that I liked, I was in Los Angeles a few years ago and taking their newer LRT system, and not only did they have automated stop announcements for all of their LRT stops, it would also tell you what bus connections you could make at those stops, which I thought was just fantastic. I would love to see some of these things make their way to other cities. When I moved to Calgary in 2012, they too had automated stop announcements on all of their LRT trains, which was perfect because, again, I was learning the city, learning the route, so it was good to know when to get off. And now, of course, 2012, I had only partial sight, so it was really handy to know when to be able to get off the train. But they didn't have it on the buses just yet. That came a few years later, and I was really glad when automated stop announcements started making their way onto the buses. Because, like I said, now it takes the responsibility away from the driver that they don't have to remember my request or somebody else's request on the bus, especially if there's more than one of us at a time. They can focus on driving and let the automated system do the job for them. But I found that even that became a bit of a hit or miss proposition because sometimes I'd get on the bus and the stop announcements were nice and clear and audible. Everybody on the bus could hear them. And yet there were other times I'd get on the bus and I found that the volume was really low and maybe only coming from the speaker at the very back of the bus. But I, like most people with a disability, sit near the front of the bus, so that's not really helpful. And then I found that I was getting on some buses where the stop announcements weren't happening at all. So I would call the transit control and I'd make reports about it, that this one wasn't calling it off, or this one where the volume was very low, or that sort of thing. And what I've learned over time is that some of the transit drivers don't like the stop announcements. They find them irritating. So they either turn the volume way, 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 way down so that it's barely audible, at least to them, and really to the rest of us, or they turn them off altogether. In fact, I had one incident about a year ago where I was very proactive that day, and I got on the bus, and as I did, I said to the bus driver, "Are your automated stop announcements working today?" And she said, "Oh, well, what stop do you want? I can let you know when we get there." And I said, no, it's fine. If your automated stop announcements are working, then I will be able to listen for it and you don't have to worry about it. You can just focus on driving. And she said, "Well, please understand that when I ride this bus all day long and I hear those announcements and it gets really irritating." And I stopped and I very respectfully said to her, "What I need you to understand is that by turning off the stop announcements, you are taking away my independence and you are making me reliant on you to know when it's my stop and to be able to get off the bus. If you have these stop announcements on, you don't have to worry about looking after me." She reluctantly turned the stop announcements back on. The stop announcements, like many other things that have been designed initially for people with disabilities, we find that they become very useful for able-bodied people. If you think about it, how many times as an able-bodied person, or how many times have you seen an able-bodied person press the automatic door opening button when they go into a building? Lots of times. Because maybe they've got their hands full, maybe they're carrying grocery bags, maybe it's a woman pushing a stroller and she's, so it's easier just to hit the button and open the door. The stop announcements come in really handy not just for people like me who have sight loss, but they also come in handy for people who are maybe new to that particular bus route, or maybe they're new to the city in general, and either they've looked up where to get off the bus, or somebody has told them, "Hey, listen for this stop and that's where you get off and you'll be fine." So they come in really handy for people who are new to the route or new to the city. They also really come in handy on days when either the bus is really crowded and maybe you can't see out the windows very well, or on days when there's really bad weather, like maybe there's snow and ice, or maybe there's a lot of rain and the windows are fogged up and that sort of thing, and you just can't tell when it's your stop. So the stop announcements become really handy for that too. So my point is, please, if you are working for a transit system, if you are a driver, please leave the stop announcements on nice and clear so that everybody can hear them. It's better for everybody all the way around. I can know when it's my stop, so can somebody else who's new to the city or new to that route, and you can focus on driving. That's everything I wanted to say today on the accessibility of public transit. I thank you very much for watching today, and I hope you have a wonderful day.